I'm very delighted to tell you about what I got to do with my money. So you all probably know this, but it's the teacher in me. So to say, what is actually a mini sabbatical? And if you like this, I'm not sure. Desire to finish your Game of Thrones box set is a fair justification for your mini sabbatical. But the purpose behind it, as you probably all know, is that we want to increase our awareness through other people and learn from other people. And so the purpose is to get funding, build for your funding opportunities, to build new collaborations and develop new courses. And my goals were the final two, that to build new collaborations and to enhance how I teach. I always consider myself a work in progress, that I can always improve in my teaching, so any opportunity I get to do that, I want to, and I thought this was a great opportunity, even though it was kind of something I was already doing. It was really nice to have the financial support to do it. I am currently enrolled at Mizzou's program. I'm pursuing an EDD, which is a doctorate in education. It's actually technically, it's educational leadership and policy analysis. I'm in a cohort. I started 2 years ago. And so I'm actually in my final semester of coursework, woohoo. And then I have to do something very small, like write and sit for comps and do a dissertation. So a couple afternoons, right? That's all I have to do. It's no big deal. All right, so I want to share with you, because it's relevant to this topic, what the model is that I'm a part of, is that it's for working practitioners, so that it is set up so that you can pursue this degree while still working. In fact, you're required to still be in your profession. So that's one of it. The goal is to develop whatever practice you are in, knowledge for that practice. So we're doing that. Our dissertation even is to be considered a dissertation in practice. So one of the requirements is whatever I research, whatever I research has to be applicable. So that's a wonderful piece of this, is that we have to show how this dissertation will make a difference in our practice every day. But probably more than anything, and the reason why I was awarded funding, is that this operates within a cohort model. What does that mean? Well, we have four campuses that each have a cohort of students that work there. So we work with Missouri State, Northwest Missouri State University, Southeast, and then University of Central Missouri, in addition to the cohort in Columbia. So each one of these has their own meeting, but they don't just come from here. So again, I'm at Mizzou and I'm at S&T. So these pulls from people in all these regional areas. So they literally cover the entire state. So I've met people from all over the state as a result of this cohort model. The way that it works is that we meet once a week, and we also do online courses, of course, because we have to do more than that. But one thing, again, that's kind of unique about our program is that we meet for a month every summer. And that was what I asked for the funding for, that we are to live in Columbia from everywhere. There's one woman who lives in the Bahamas, for heaven's sakes. And she actually came as well. Wow. So we spend this summer, the entire month of July is spent at Mizzou together. And we take our classes there. There are students, there are backpacks, we walk on campus, we do all these different things. So that's a key, but also my classmates. My classmates are in higher ed, in various roles, but they're also in K-12, which is a very unique insight that really, to me, really helps educate me. I'm in the teacher education program for a lot of my classes, and it really helps me to talk and work with those people who are in the trenches, and how, when we talk about, we're going to change how we educate our teachers, how that makes a difference in their everyday world. So that is incredibly valuable. And again, they play various roles. There's people in staff positions, faculty positions. There's people who are diversity officers. So not only are they from different universities, different settings, but they also play different roles. So imagine this room is full of these brains of people that can, and part of the cohort model is we share all of this stuff. And we share all the time in that, like, we're discussion boards, but there's something really wonderful about being in the same room with someone, working on a project that we have developed over time, and so that's what this summer did. So Cafe gave me a lot of money, thank you, for me to spend that month in Columbia. So I got my room and board, I got my tuition, I got my books. They even paid for, I needed access to a computer program, SPSS for data analysis, they paid for that. All of this that I would have paid for it, but it was such a really nice thing to have, so that the issue of finances was off the table. It was tremendous, tremendous. So during the summer, in particular, I was enrolled in was policy analysis for educational leadership and quantitative methods in educational research. So before we even started in the summer, we were put into these groups. And do I have this on here? Yeah, my groups came from, one was a faculty member, one was a center director, one was an associate dean, and another was director of institutional research. So we began our collaboration even before we got there this summer, and we had to find a research question that we wanted to look at, and we didn't have enough time to collect data in a month, so instead we used archival data and institutional research data. But we started this and we threw on research questions and we talked about it, and one of the women in my group, she's the Associate Dean of Diversity and Inclusion at Truman, and she had a hypothesis, and we did a huge literature review on the fact that her hypothesis was students would feel more successful if their faculty looked like them. And so, so there is something to that if we have that, I may feel less like I belong here if I don't see anyone with my color or my gender or I just only see people that I can't aspire to be that. I'm not that. So she came up with this kind of research question. So we did literature reviews and we talked, and we then came up with this idea that we looked at, could we see an increase in graduation rates we looked at the percentage of, it was faculty of color, if that percentage was higher in the student body, was it commensurate with the student body? Sadly, we didn't get significant results, but we still were onto something. Most of the research said we should have gotten something, and we were, limited by the constraints of the research methods. But whether or not you get significant results, as we tell our students all the time, doesn't mean the learning didn't happen. We got great pieces of information. We consulted, we talked to different people, we had more information. And the nice thing, again, about these people is that we started this relationship, it's still going on. We're still conversing, we're still talking about it, we're still passing ideas back and forth. How does it work in this person's world? How do they implement what we came up with? And so even though we didn't get significant results, we're mindful of the fact that there's a piece, one of the things that we found was that when people feel like they belong, and we know this from retention research, that when you feel you belong somewhere, it matters. And maybe it's not if someone has the same color of skin or sexual orientation as you do, but we as those, maybe there's an awareness amongst us faculty that I can be welcoming to that environment, even though I don't share the same physical characteristics. Okay? So how did this achieve my goals? I got to take statistics again, yikes. Talk about needing a cohort model to get that to work again, and we did. And I learned so much, like this huge crash course that I had. But more than anything, we built. So we would have. Again, I was a student again. So we didn't just go to class from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. We had to reserve study rooms, and we had to, so we collaborated constantly. We also had, so that was the work that we did with the statistics, but we also had a work on policy, and we had to take a policy and analyze it. And so I had to dig into different policies that we have at S&T and look at those, and then we compared those as to what policies. That one thing I discovered was that non-tenure track people here were the only ones that were referred to as irregular. Yeah. Nowhere else in the system, or even. So again, that was something, and that was again something that I shared with my colleagues, and I said, we just call them this. We don't call them irregular. So, just something to say. Also, we did a whole discussion and had to come up again with, it's all research based, and one of our professors said, think like doctoral students. This isn't because I think this way, I think this way. But we got to talk about, one of the things that we had to research was gun violence in school. What are solutions to it? And there were some real personal stories that came up. Again, something we don't worry much about, but then the awareness of K-12, all that stuff. It also, again, informs everything I do. I think I'm a better professor because I've been a student and am a student. I said that to my students the other day. I said, I'm more mindful, I guess, of the way that I do it because I'm enrolled and I hear what other people have said and what's successful to them, and then I get feedback from them to say, this is not an effective way to teach, this is not helpful. And so there's that, and it's ongoing. In fact, we just had a discussion about it the other day, and if you think undergrads are hard to deal with, all these doctoral students are getting really mad about points. and the group meet that's going on, and how everyone is so angry at this professor because she only gives someone 4 out of 5 in the discussion, and they deserve a 5, and all that kind of stuff. That you think we're bad? I mean, we're supposed to be adult learners. It was kind of interesting. Anyway, learning about what is transformational learning. Try my very best to increase that in my classes, how other students, meaning that ideally striving for the fact that everything should be transformative, that they should change the way they think and feel about the world. And through this class and through my collaborations, I try to implement that and be at least aware of it. I realize that they're going to fall asleep and they're not going to always be engaged, but I have the tools in my toolkit of how to get that to happen, ideally. So I want to deeply thank Cafe for giving me that opportunity. As I said, I would have done it anyway, but it was such a nice financial help to do it. Can I answer any questions? Went through it kind of fast.
How about a round of applause for us?
I think anyone that is thinking about it, the process was very, very easy. It's rare that there's money out there that you can just have. So, so it's so nice to take that opportunity. We all need a break. We all need to collaborate. For me, it energizes me to talk to these people and say, I'm not the only one that does it. Wow, you have this solution. I would recommend or encourage anybody who's even thinking about it, please do this. When this first came up, and I thought, well, I don't need this, I don't deserve this money because I'm going to be doing this anyway. But then when Larry said that piece, the more time I spend around K-12, and then just different perspective, and it informs my teaching so much to see what they're looking for, and that I can then give them my piece, and that we actually did research last semester on what's the best way to prepare. One of the things that we were concerned with is mental health. Even we expect so much of our high school teachers to be aware of a child's mental health, and yet are they really trained for that? And so we looked at different teacher preparation programs and noticed that there's very little, if any, inclusion of mental health training. Not saying they're going to turn into therapists by any means, but just do they know what to look for? And the overwhelming evidence is no. And so that would be a recommendation that, again, and that's another thing too, literature saying all the time, we need to be talking to each other. Instead, K-12 does what they do, and then higher ed does this, and then we go, how come they don't mesh? Because we talk to each other. So I'm doing my little part in the world to communicate with the K-12 people. Yes, Larry.
Can I ask a second question?
Sure, of course you can.
So in the cohort you worked with, did the folks from the other universities have anything comparable in terms of support?
This?
Yeah.
No. Oh, no. No. In fact, no. Not that. In fact, some of them, not only did they not get support, they were semi-penalized for doing it. That they didn't give them leave, they didn't give so we are there. Yeah, so the message is, not only do you let me do this, but you gave me money to do it. The message from them is, if you're going to do it, don't let it interfere with what you're doing here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's give Professor Krueger a